Thanks so much for the chance to be here. I always enjoy college visits. I never got to go to my own graduation. I got completely off cycle and went and got a job and didn't get back. So there's a little bit of an unmet need, and sort of coming back and being surrounded by faculty is sort of making me feel a little more whole again. I want to start with a sense of everyone's own background. How many people here teach in the humanities? Show of hands. Oh, well represented. I love it. How many people are students in the humanities? Equally good. We're going to do the social sciences next. You can put history in whichever category you want. There's an endless argument where it belongs. It belongs everywhere. But how many people teach in the social sciences? Okay. And studying in the social sciences? Okay, so I've got a humanities-skewed audience. I just want to give room. Do we have any business students, engineering students, pharmacy students, actuaries, people in vocational fields? Okay, I'm with my people. This is good. So this talk's going to split into three parts. I'm going to open with some broad remarks about where we are in the economy and where the national mood is vis-a-vis liberal arts. Some of the framing language you've already heard in the introduction, but I'll have a couple new slides on that. Part two, I'm going to share some data about your own school. One of the things about working at LinkedIn is we have remarkable and extensive databases, and I sort of worked up a little psychographic profile of the school, so you can take a look and either agree or gasp or applaud, and all reactions are welcome. And then part three, I'm going to get very tactical, and I'm going to talk about what can be done to help make the transition from a great university to a great career in a world where the two often seem like they're just plain out of sync. One of the things I like to do, especially with an audience about this size, is to make it more interactive. So we'll take a pause at the end of each of the three sections and open it up for questions. The more audience engagement we have, the better this experience becomes. So if you see anything that strikes you as either something you'd like to add to or something you'd like to challenge, please weigh in, and question time will be coming soon. So let's get rolling. This is the intro to section one, lots of different eccentric examples of the world of work. So this is a framing slide that I like to begin with. These are all the jobs in the United States split into a pie chart. Two things to notice here. One is everything in yellow and everything in green are jobs that something beyond a high school education is necessary. The yellow fields tend to be ones that 4 years of college and even an advanced degree is appropriate for. The green ones are more flexible, but at the very least an associate's degree makes sense. So we've now got an economy where more than half of the jobs go to people who've got something beyond a high school degree. Something that always startles me when I look at it, but it is what it is. We have more people working in sales, 15.7 million, than we do in all of manufacturing, 10.3 million, and that gap just keeps getting wider. So I'm always a little puzzled when the conversation turns to how do we bring manufacturing jobs back to this country. That's pretty much stabilized out. What we should be talking about is how do we take people with high school educations and open up careers for them in sales. But anyway, that's the big world we live in. The other point to make is that service sector jobs are now all of the green and all of the yellow, and they're not just the blue. So the old trope that you can't make money in the service sector, you need to be in manufacturing, it's just the opposite. An awful lot of good jobs involve working with your mind rather than working with your hands. What my sister refers to as jobs where you take a shower before work instead of a shower after work. So you've come to the right place. You knew it already, but these are a couple data points to fill that in. When I started talking about the economy, we had close to 10% unemployment. We're down around 4% now. So at least in the abstract, this is a great market to be going out job hunting. Pay is starting to go up. Companies are starting to offer better perks. It's not happening as quickly as I would have thought, but for anyone who's graduating in the next year or two, you're coming into a strong economy, and instead of looking for reasons not to hire you, you're going to find employers who are looking for ways to fill a job opening that's screamingly vacant and needs to get filled. So the wind's at your back. Where are all the openings? Again, we've got an element of the public conversation that focuses on computer technology. There are great jobs there, but if you look at where jobs have been created the last 4 or 5 years, 6% of them are in information technology, and that's defined broadly. That's networking, that's software engineering, that's classic IT. 94% of them are outside IT. So if you've got people down the hall across the other side of campus saying, I'm a computer science major, I own the world, they own 6% of it. The other 94% is yours. Now, why are we stressed? This is a slightly complex chart, but it's got an important idea in it. So this is data that National Bureau of Economic Research gathered, looking to see how many people earn more than their parents at age 30. So what do you earn at age 30 versus what mom and dad earned at age 30? And I notice a few people in the room who are probably at least 31, 32, maybe a touch over. So probably for the faculty, how many of you would you say by age 30 you were out earning your parents? Couple, not that many. How many feel your parents at age 30 out earned you? Okay, that's more. So that's the source of frustration. I mean, we calibrate our own income to not so much national averages, but to our next door neighbor, and especially to our own family. I've discovered coming home for Thanksgiving, let alone getting reconnected with my cousins, is pretty much a silhouetted, how you doing? How much you're earning? What kind of car did you buy? And, we can't help it. We're Americans. It's part of the competition. But if we're in a world now where family earnings are trending in the direction that this graph shows, where it's harder to out-earn mom and dad, that creates job anxiety. The other thing, of course, is college tuitions are going up much faster than consumer prices. The yellow line is college prices. The black line is consumer prices. For in-state tuition here, you're probably shielded from some of what other people feel, but even so, I'm sure you can find people on campus who will tell you how much cheaper it was to come here. And when you add in the cost of textbooks, which is just criminal, the yellow line goes up even higher. One more big factor that makes life more challenging, we still have this trope that back in the good old days, everyone had stable careers where you could work at the same company for 20, 30 years, and you got 4 weeks of paid vacation, and you got full health insurance. It's actually always been a pretty small slice of America that had that, but we tend to romanticize the past. What we do have now is a world where the blue line, which is people getting 1099s, measure of contract work, the gig economy, is going up, and it's gone up quite significantly since the Great Recession. Number of people getting W-2s, the classic measure of a full benefits company job, is sort of stabilized out. You can make a good living in the gig economy. I did it for 8 or 9 years after I left the Wall Street Journal, and there were moments that were just sheer joy, and getting a speaking invitation to Peru and realizing I don't have to ask anyone for permission to stay a week and go see Machu Picchu. I am my own boss, and off I went. There are also moments where you're going, good heavens, I just did a week's worth of work and I got paid $14 for it. And that's kind of stressful. So we'll talk a little bit later about the gig economy, but this is part of the mix, that the classic full benefits corporate job is harder to find. Big companies are outsourcing more, they're using contract labor more. So that certainly makes the migration into the workforce more challenging. Now, let's start to get specific and talk about UAlbany and the liberal arts. I've got 8 or 9 slides here that should cheer you up, 1 or 2 that should annoy you, but let's get rolling. So, first thing I did was sit down with LinkedIn and go, what are the most common majors if you graduate here? And I broke it into 3 cohorts, people who were in school in 1996, people who were in school in 2006, and people who graduated within the past year or 2. There's a little bit of blurring, so probably the 96 one includes class of 95 and class of 97, but they're clustered basically in different decades. So what do we see? Psychology has always been the boss department. It's the one that most people choose as a major. The gaps are not gigantic, but it's an exciting field. And I didn't go far in psychology, but I loved the intro psych class, and I know it was a class of 500 people when I took it. It's just almost an essential part of the college experience. Go back 20 years ago, English was the second most common major. History was on the list. English, I don't have to tell you, has sort of faded off the list. It's a wonderful discipline without reading, where that's what separates us from the animals. But as a major, it's become more challenging to assure people that career prospects are good. Business has moved up a bit. If you go all the way out to the end, accounting and economics are up. If you go a little farther down than what I show you, you'll see marketing and finance. Overall now, we have about triple the number of people taking business majors as we do English majors in the country. If you go back to 1970, those numbers were reversed. It's a trend that I can't stop, but I always encourage people, no matter what their major is, read some great books in college. It'll just make you a better person. It'll probably make you a better manager. In fact, in my own book, a lot of the very best salespeople are English majors. And I asked one of them, what's the connection? And she said, I treat all of my customers as characters in a novel. And bear in mind, she's read Toni Morrison, she's read Faulkner, she's encountered some pretty dodgy characters in her reading. And she's able to sell effectively to the real world equivalents. I'm being a little bit flip, but I'm actually making a serious point. You work better in the business world if you have empathy, and empathy doesn't just mean liking other people. You may not like them, but you understand them, and you have a sense of what makes them tick. And that is an incredibly valuable skill that an education in the humanities will teach you, certainly in English, but in philosophy, in linguistics, in art, in music. You just gain that ability to understand a bigger slice of humanity, and you can put that to work in the years after graduation. So those are the main trends that come out there. Computer science, interestingly enough, at your campus has bounced around a bit, but it's not profoundly different than it was 20 years ago. You'll also notice in 2006, when the tech sector was down, computer science was off the list. So people tend to go with what's hot. I do talk at other schools where everyone's becoming a computer science major, but if anything, I'm struck by how rounded and diverse the selection is here. What can you do with a psychology degree? So this, again, is LinkedIn data, and this is University of Albany students, and we managed to look at everyone's profile after they graduated and then figure out what line they're working in. So the top three areas, healthcare services, education, community and social services, all sort of classic areas where you'd expect a psych major to be. But look at all the other things that come into mix, and it's essentially the whole spectrum of careers. You could go anywhere. People end up in sales, 352 end up in research, HR pulls more than 300, a bunch of people end up in law, information technology, media, even finance. Money and psychology sometimes intersect in interesting ways. So regardless of what your major is, I could put up a slide that would show you sociology or English, and you'd probably see a pretty similar dispersal. We'll get to more slides in a little bit that show you just how diverse people's outcomes are based on their major. And in fact, here's one of them. So the Brookings Institution did a study a couple of years ago looking at both student loan data and IRS data to figure out what people studied, what careers they ended up in, and what they were earning. And this covers more than 1 million people. It's really a spectacular study. You could not ask for better quality data. There's really only a small number of fields in the US where what you study pretty much determines your destiny. And if you study nursing, you're going to be a nurse. That's kind of how it works. Same story for accounting. But if we look both at the natural sciences and the humanities and the social sciences, the great thing about the American college experience, we do it in 4 years. England does it in 3. When you do it in 3, you're pretty much told these are the classes you will take. There are no electives. You have just chosen your destiny. Congratulations on your new apprenticeship to this single field that you're going into. We give you an extra year, and that gives you time to take electives, to explore things, to change majors, to double major, to have a major and a minor, to take summer jobs in areas outside your major. And you can see from the numbers. Physics majors end up in all kinds of fields. Software is the most common, but less than 20%. The fields we love, only 18% of English majors end up as teachers, and that includes university professors, community college instructors, kindergarten teachers, grade school and high school teachers. You'll see a lot of English majors end up in law, writing, sales, all sorts of other fields. History, the same thing. For some reason, more history majors than I would expect end up in the clergy. And I don't know if it's, you think about big things and you take them to big things, but the core point is your major is not your destiny. This is a deliciously confusing chart from Williams College. I'm proud of it being confusing. That's actually why I put it on the chart. So the blue shows arts majors and where they go, and they end up everywhere. law, business, finance, technology, what have you. The orange shows social science majors, and they scatter to all directions just as much. Left hand is what you studied, right hand is where you end up. And even for the tech majors, some of them end up making their way into education and community and public sector work. So your major is not your destiny. I put up Williams just because their alumni constantly fill out forms, and as I sometimes joke, they are to alumni studies what fruit flies are to genetics, that there are lots of them and they're easy to keep track of. But the point will apply to any school. So what do businesses want? Why are people so mobile with their degrees? This is fresh data from just a couple months ago from LinkedIn. We went and asked hiring executives all over the country, what are you looking for? And they gave us a list of very job-specific skills, but 57% of them said, you know what we really want are transferable skills that you can use in almost any area that have much more to do with your people-to-people relations than they do with the technical material you learned in school. And the four big areas are leadership, communication, collaboration, time management. So let's do a show of hands again. For everyone who's faculty, how many of you teach some element of leadership, communication, collaboration, or time management in your classes? It should be just about everyone. I mean, whenever you set a deadline and say the paper is due, that's a time management exercise. Whenever you ask people to work in groups or even respond to another classmate's comment or respond to yours, we're in the zone of communication and collaboration. Leadership is a spongy concept, but as you work your way up a field and you go from taking notes in that introductory class to starting to contribute your own knowledge by the time you're in a senior class, you're stepping into the world of leadership. And this is part of the full college experience, and it's why college graduates get paid a lot more than high school graduates. I mean, part of it is the technical skills, but part is the ability to deliver all four of these. The ultimate time management, you got to get the degree. But you don't get a silver medal for almost getting the degree. And that is a big, formidable challenge. And once you've shown that you can work through 4 years and get a college degree, you've got an ability to take things to the finish line and get them done in an amount of time that turns out to be incredibly useful. So this is a slide I want to spend a little time on. We often hear that universities develop critical thinking. And critical thinking is one of these terms like democracy or patriotism that gets used to mean a lot of different things by a lot of different people. So I decided to peel back that concept a bit when I did the book, and I went to Indeed.com. I pulled out 5,600 job ads that asked for critical thinking and that paid at least $100,000. And then I started grouping them into buckets, and I figure, okay, these are nice jobs to get. This is, the success medal after college. You get one of these and mom and dad are excited and they start introducing you to neighbors that you didn't even know they had because they want to show you off. So what are people looking for when they want critical thinking and they want to pay six figures? 5 areas that I highlighted here. And if you look at these are awfully similar to what you do in college. You tackle uncharted areas. You take classes in fields you hadn't studied before. You explore new disciplines. You take the 200 or 300 series class and learn at a level of specialization. It becomes a way of life. And businesses need that. They need people who are willing to open that first office in Bangkok or Shanghai or wherever. They need people who are willing to sit down and help to design a product that never existed before. The next 2 are sort of core to what higher education is. You get good at your research methods, and you get good at problem solving. Those you'll see across all kinds of disciplines. The engineering guys and the business guys can make the case that they do that too, and they do it strongly, but there's no reason for the humanities or social sciences to take a back seat. And the caliber of research methods that you learn across the social sciences now was always strong, but it's stronger than ever. It's a field that's making the most of data analytic tools and all sorts of ways of gathering knowledge and harvesting it. The last 2 are the ones I want to spend some time on because I think these really are distinctive to a liberal arts education. And the first one is really empathy under another name, being good at reading the room, knowing what different people want. I did a piece one time about highly successful people who worked at McDonald's as teenagers. And I remember Marcia Fudge, who's a congresswoman from Ohio. And she had said, once you've dealt with an angry customer at McDonald's as a teenager, you know what you need to deal with an angry constituent, regardless of whether that's a person who's been arrested or whether that's a person who runs a giant company in your district. College is a great place to learn that, particularly seminars, particularly the kinds of classes where you're analyzing different views. It's Athens and Sparta, it's Israelis and Palestinians, it's physicians and people with opioid addiction and law enforcement. I mean, just figuring out what are all the dynamics in play here. That's a skill that you'll use again and again and again. College is a great place to get good at it. And then the third, this often gets called good communication skills, and I'm so sorry whenever I see that label because I think it's lifeless. I mean, it means something once you have them, but there aren't very many people who go, boy, my business is in trouble right now because I don't have good communication skills. They go, my business is in trouble because my workforce is lethargic and no one cares, and I need someone who can talk to them and get them inspired. Or my business is in trouble because nobody wants to buy my stuff. I need someone who can be persuasive and sell. So, I try and write with verbs, persuade, inspire. If you can tell your communication skills in that way, you're going from a nice to have to a must have. And that will tend to open the job doors faster. We'll get to this point in more detail in a little bit, but I think so often within the university setting, we talk about the process by which people acquire skills, and in the business setting, we talk about results. It's the same thing. We're coming in on the same area. But I think in terms of speaking the language that gets employers excited and gets them to start writing big checks, being able to couch it in terms of these are the results I can bring you, these are the ways I can drive your objectives forward as opposed to just I have skills, tends to make the conversation go faster and better. Time for more Albany stats. So what we have here is self-assessment of student skills. For some reason, I don't know why, older graduates say they're good at management. Younger graduates tend not to. It may just be that older graduates are more senior, or it's a way of people who are a little tired of doing the real work to just sort of sit and issue memos and tell themselves they're managing. But be that as it may. As we get to the newer groups, you'll see, again, a lot of the things that very much match the kinds of experience that you'll get out of college. Public speaking is high, which I like to see. I tend to regard that as a differentiator between people who get promoted high into management and people who don't. If you know how to talk to a crowd, I look at what we saw on television yesterday with the CEO of Facebook trying to figure out how to talk to a sometimes sympathetic, sometimes hostile Congress. He got 2 years of college and then checked out. Imagine if he'd stayed for 2 more. Imagine how much better his testimony could have been. He did okay, but there were also some questions where you go, you know what, junior year, senior year, you really could have had what you needed to get there. Research, again, I tend to see this much more at highly selective schools, research making in the top 3 or 4. And again, you're going to be taking a leadership role, you're going to be moving into a high impact area if you've got good research methods, and self-assess, this is something that Albany creates. Social media obviously has jumped in for anyone who's been in college the last 10 or 15 years. People back in the day didn't have social media, so they tend to hire younger people and turn you loose to do whatever you think might work. And as long as you tell them you got a new strategy, they'll keep you on the payroll forever. So another important point to make, and this is especially vital in conversations with parents, and like it or not, I end up talking to parent groups from time to time, and I spend more time on this slide with them, but it's important for any audience. One of the big benefits of going to college is not so much stability. I've already argued that the old-fashioned stability just isn't there. Instead, it's mobility. It's that chance to move from job to job and not be trapped in a single job that isn't working out. So which group of people does the most job switching between ages 22 and 28? Turns out to be people with college degrees, 5.8 jobs. And some of those may be promotions. Some of those may be starting over with a new boss. You try with one boss and you find that he or she and you don't get along very well. You're free to try somewhere else. It can, again, geography, you switch cities, you switch fields. You start out in sales, you don't like sales, you want to do counseling. You start out in counseling, you want to put your analytic skills to work, you end up in finance. College gives you the mobility to do that. And by contrast, high school graduates have less mobility, community college graduates somewhere in between. But one of the things that inspired me to write this book, I had talked with the head of career services at Reed, and Reed graduates tend to take an especially circuitous route, and she was explaining it to parents one time, and they'd said, this all sounds good, but can't we get there without the meandering? And I said, I want to write this book to give meandering its good name back again. And there's never a better time in your life than your early or mid-20s to try different things. You don't have a mortgage, you probably don't have kids, you're more likely to be, unattached by marriage, or even if you are, to have a spouse who's willing to move too, and your living expenses are less. And my goodness, if there's ever a time in life to explore and not end up trapped in a job you don't like, this is it. So this is an example from the book. This is Polly Washburn, who is an Oberlin graduate. As you can see, she's worked in 5 different fields that nominally sound quite different. But if you come back to that green slide showing the 5 areas, she's got an ability to read the room. She's got the ability to persuade. And she's she's got good research skills, and she can define problems and solve them. Each one of these jobs just puts that to work. And once you've got those, you can move from field to field to field. You can gain in prestige, you can gain in pay. You can also just have an interesting life. And I always think in career conversations, sometimes we think strictly about job title and salary. There's a certain baseline level of pay you need to get to, or else life just gets difficult. But once you've hit the baseline, it's time also to think about, am I enjoying this? Am I the kind of person who people come up to and say, you've got an interesting job? Or am I sort of dreading each Monday when it arrives? And it's a big country, it's a lot of opportunities, and taking the kinds of steps that'll get you those sorts of opportunities just makes such a difference. So what's the difference between a humanities major and or a social sciences major and your choice of accounting or computer science? This is a graph from, again, Brookings Hamilton. It looks at the percentage of people who have full-time work at age 25 to 34, dark blue line, part-time work, medium blue, not working, unemployed is the second lightest blue, and then just out of the workforce because you're having kids or you're traveling the world or you won the lottery, whatever, is the last blue. So a few surprises. One, even in very vocational fields, 10% of the people drop out of the workforce. I'm not sure I know why. I know parenting is some part of it, and there may be people who go off the grid for reasons I can't imagine. But anyone who tells you, I've got a totally secure major, I'm guaranteed a job, the answer is no. Everything's got 10 to 20% at the end where you go, you know what, actually, life isn't going to work out the way you thought for whatever reason, good or bad. If we look at the social science fields and humanities, the difference between those and the more vocational fields is probably about a 10% bar in the part-time work. So for 9 out of 10 people, the outcomes are pretty similar. There is one set of people who are more likely to work part-time their first few years coming out with a humanities or social science degree than a very vocationally oriented one. So think of some of what follows as my thoughts for if you're in that 10%. How you can improve your situation, but also a reminder that for 90% of you, it's not going to be that different. By and large, the major you've got will get you to a full-time job unless you choose that you don't want to be in the workforce. So the 3 things that will help you tremendously, and these are ones that cannot be automated, and these are ones that your choice of major is going to give you stacked in a really nice degree: curiosity, creativity, empathy. And I did a piece for a few years ago called Empathy Will Be the #1 Job Skill at 2020. And my God, it just exploded on the web. It was the most viral thing I've ever done, and millions of page views and thousands of shares and comments and what have you. But the point is, when you look at the fast-growing job areas, they're in fields where the human touch matters. And that's true in nursing, that's true in physical therapy, that's true in no end of healthcare. It's true in sports coaches and counselors and teachers. It's true even in financial planners. And that's a field that the engineers thought would be automated 20 years ago. We just have a robot tell us what to do with our money. And the answer is money is so tied in with self-esteem and aspirations and resentments and what have you that the human dimension of talking to people about their money means that stockbrokers and investment firms are hiring like crazy. They have a shortage of people able to do this. And the pay is good, and humanities and social science majors are welcome. The liberal arts thrive in a surprisingly large part of finance. This is a more complicated slide than I want to go into because one of the things I'm really wanting to do now, I've given you a lot of ideas. I see some people are taking notes, some people are nodding their heads, and some people are starting to move in a way that says, this is the right time to ask you, what's on your mind? What questions would you ask? How does this relate to your world? So let's switch to questions for a little bit. And if we can get 3 or 4 questions at this stage, it'll give us new grist to do the final section. Who's got something that they've heard or want to pick up on?
I have a question about earlier slide.
Yes, please.
Do you know what Polly's major was at Evelyn?
She was legal studies and social sciences, very interdepartmental. I think it may have been a custom built major.
Yep.
So the question was, what was Polly Washburn's major? And it's a lot of the high mobility people will end up in interdisciplinary fields. One thing I found in my book that I hadn't expected was a larger number of people who've done something overseas. And that also tended to create a more resilient, adaptive personality. There's something about being in a sidewalk cafe in Vietnam with Vietnamese and you figure out how to order that by the time you go back to the U.S., whatever cultural issues you have to work through, you go, okay, I don't know how to do this. I can handle it. Yeah.
You talk about empathy and a lot of intangible qualities that are supposed to make you marketable.
Yeah.
How do you make those qualities tangible to a future employer to make them believe that you have that quality?
I love that question. In fact, most of the rest of the slides are going to get at how do you tell your story to employers. So I'll take 1 or 2 more and then we will roll straight into that. But you're right, that's the money question and we're headed there. Anything from this corner of the room? Yes.
Maybe this is a longer answer than you can do right now, but as a large state school, where classes range from very large to relatively small, what do you suggest we do in our humanities and social sciences classes to increase some of these skills that are in highly marketable in standard social science classes?
So the seminars, I think, are golden, and that opportunity to discuss an issue, debate it around, and also to learn the etiquette of what's it like when you're the one person who disagrees, what's it like when the class splits 50-50, how do we build other people's point, how do you respond in a way that builds on what's been said rather than getting strident, what's the boundary between championing your position and being jerk. And it's much better to get on the wrong side of that and making your plenty and recalibrate than to be in the middle of a congressional hearing or a hire and fire meeting and mess it up. So make full use of that and showcase that. It may be worth getting meta for a moment and explaining why the seminar process is so valuable. I ended up serving on a couple of boards within the last 10 years, and my God, it's like freshman seminar. When I go, what prepared me to sit at this board meeting and evaluate a CEO? That was the closest experience in my life I've had to it. And there's the director who talks too much, and there's the director who's quiet but doesn't like what the rest of the team is doing, and there's the CEO who's either encouraging debate or is trying to shut off debate, and maybe some of them are thoughtful. So yeah, you've got some people over there. The large lecture classes, yeah, you kind of need to do that as a gating mechanism to figure out are people serious about their major and can we give them the tools that they need to go on to advanced study. But I'd say once you get to a class of 30 or less, you've got a chance to do that dynamic, and if you're ever on the clinic, you've got to go to close. Yes?
I have a question. You mentioned Zuckerberg's testimony to Congress and also Steve Jobs' ode to the iPod, the iPad, which is lovely to hear. And could you just review for us the undergraduate majors and trajectories of the 3 giants in tech? Steve Jobs and Zuckerberg and Bill Gates. Did they all complete their degrees, or were they oriented toward the humanities?
So none of those 3 did. Jeff Bezos did stick around, and he got his degree, I believe, in computer science at Princeton, and Jeff's a very well-read guy, and he kind of has the products. So that's good. Zuckerberg, I think, was on track to be a dual major in psychology and computer science, and checked out after about 2.5 years. He's very innovative. I'm not sure coming out of college that quickly and going into business, it's a bit like the baseball player who, goes, or the basketball player who goes from high school to pros and misses some of the fundamentals along the way. Incredibly talented, but, skip the step. Steve Jobs did a year at Reed and then just decided college wasn't right for him. I think he was general studies at the time. He did have a story that he would share about auditing a calligraphy class and getting a sense of the aesthetics of design. And I think that was actually dropped out, but they felt it was sort of an interesting spirit and wanted to try and accommodate, sort of stick around and thought of something out there. In Jobs' case, probably the most curious and person of mine. Bill Gates, I think, made it to junior year at Harvard, and I'm not sure if they had a computer science major at the time. I don't think they did. Whatever year it was. But Gates, the last 10 or 15 years, has certainly wanted to fill in the holes. He put out a summer reading list, and has gotten deeply into a lot of fields that are very far from computers. I think there's a sense of wanting that. You probably asked that question wanting to take it to a meta plan, and I'm happy to go there. What would you?
Well, I'm not sure I did. I don't think that the fact that certain magnates or tech magnates did not complete classical humanities degrees, that doesn't necessarily invalidate the trend of your argument. My curiosity was simply piqued, and I didn't know offhand what had these other tech barons done for their undergraduate careers.
Yeah, they're an interesting set of outliers. I mean, that's not the normal path. And the answer may be that at certain stages, technology offers such amazing opportunities, and you can be young and still make the most of it. But the opportunity cost of staying in college, at least if you measure in dollars, is big enough that some very bright people check out and then go build in their general learning later. It's not a common path, and you generally know what happens to college dropouts. It does not work out as well. But appreciate you asking. Okay, so we have a big challenge of, now that you've got all of these marvelous soft skills that employers eventually want, how do you leapfrog the process of the interview and the job hunt so that you can get recognized for what you've got? I've got examples in the book, but let's talk about the actual process. So this is a slide I like to linger on. This is metaphorically, this nice smooth road here is college. And then down the way where you've got that red vehicle, you've got the nice smooth road of work. And somewhere in between, you've got this horrendous cave out where just the two don't connect. And what's the cave out? It's the difference between how we talk about achievement in college and how we talk about achievement in the workplace. It's the collegiate focus on the formal transcript when employers are really looking for if you will, informal second transcript of what jobs have you done, what people skills do you have, how do you present in an interview. I remember coming out of college, or last year of college, I had what looked like pretty good grades. I had pretty good extracurriculars. I remember sitting down with a recruiter from Citibank, and she had said, "Oh, you got a great resume here. This is going to be a fun interview." And then she goes, "Would you like a cup of coffee?" And I didn't realize I was about to be the equivalent of just walk off the stage. So I got a couple of things, and she goes, "Oh, well, I'm going to have a cup of coffee." And I go, "Oh, I think I'll have one too." And she goes and gets 2 cups of coffee, and she goes, "Now, do you want cream in yours?" I go, "No, I'll have it black." And she goes, "Well, I'm going to have it with cream." And I go, "Okay, well, I'll have it with cream too, because I'm trying so hard to be agreeable." And she just looks at me and goes, "I've given you 2 really simple decisions. You haven't been able to make either one of them. What makes you think that you'd be any good at banking?" And I realized in the span of the coffee question, I'd gone from one of Citibank's prime candidates to someone whose interview was over about 1 minute and 30 seconds in. And obviously the fact that I'm still telling you the story means that I was traumatized by it for decades. But the broader point is employers are looking for something different, at least on the surface, than what college taught you. And deep down, they want everything that's good about your college education, but there will be strange little rituals that you'll have to hop over. And please don't get hung up on the coffee question. So let's get more specific about what I'm talking about. So in this section, I'm going to focus on 3 things. How to look for a job, which I think is different certainly than the academic model. There's a great way to go and get hired as an assistant professor somewhere, but I'm going to offer you something different. What to say in your interview, and again, that's going to take you in different places. And then the third point, which is something that Albany actually does really well, is where geographically should you be looking for your job? So let's get rolling. First thing, an awful lot of jobs are never advertised. We're going to do this both for students and for faculty. How many faculty people got your first job by answering an ad? Okay, how many did not answer an ad and just sort of talked their way into a job? Okay, so even within academia. And academia is probably the most structured setting, but especially as I talk to recent grads in humanities and liberal arts, the ability to invent your own job, to talk your way into a job, to meet people in a sector that's interesting to you becomes crucial. And then they start to go, oh, you sound like a clever person. We should create a job for you. And so much of the process now involves that level of networking. So let me make that point a bit more. This actually comes out of the late Dick Bowles' work, the What Color is Your Parachute guy. And toward the end of his career, he modeled this up. The idea that instead of sending out your resume at the beginning, you should save your resume for quite a bit farther down the pathway. And the first thing you should do is figure out what fields appeal to you or comfortable, feel like they're you. And that means, chatting with recent alumni if you can network with them, coming to industry events, going to conferences if you're in a city where they are, just going on the web and sort of finding out what people do. And you may discover you want to be in government, you just like what government is. You may discover that, finance fascinates you, or, some element of, counseling and healthcare and connecting with people fascinates you. Once you find that, then start meeting individuals there, get to know them, do job shadows, follow them up for an informational interview. There are an awful lot of people that want to help, and take advantage of that. They will see a little bit of themselves in you, and at one point they were graduated from college and trying to find work. I will get approached a couple times a quarter by people who found me in an alumni directory, and if we went to the same school, I'll make time for them. And they'll get 20 minutes almost no matter what, and if they're interesting, I'll start sending them names and opportunities and ways to rejigger their resume. This system does reward the bold. You can't sit in row 19 and bubble in all the answers and get an A. But that's the transition from college to the world of work. And then, your resume becomes a validating point once they know they're quite interested in you. So I've explained it in theoretical terms. Let me give you some data on this. So Lever, which is a human relations company, analyzed 4 million interactions of all of the companies that they tracked in terms of how do jobs actually get filled and how much do people have to do to get them. If you ship resumes, 1 in every 152 resumes gets you a job. If you're working contacts, 1 in 16 contacts gets you a job. Referrals are just immeasurably more powerful. And the nice thing about being at a selective school like this is you've got an alumni group that can help you. You've got a career services department that can help you. But look for ways to be in that 1 in 16 pile as opposed to the 1 in 152. We've made it easier to apply automatically for jobs, and the result is where I work. We had a part-time fill-in job for someone going out on maternity leave. We had 250 people apply for it within a week of putting up the notice. And that means 249 people, including some who quite certainly could have done the job, are going to be told, sorry, we can't take you. So the more you can get yourself on the right-hand side and less on the left-hand side, the better. Again, another way of saying it, look for ways to create your own job. I think in a lot of fields, there are not that many companies that will advertise saying we're looking for an anthropology major. Could we please have a philosophy major for this job? But they will want the skills you've got. And if you can strike up that conversation rather than looking for a job spec that's written exactly for you, there's plenty of work to be found. Remember, it's 4% unemployment. It's close to full employment now. There's not a big pool of older people trying to steal your job from you. You're coming out at a time when the American economy needs it. This is a tangent, but hopefully I can make it fast. Hopefully I can make it good. The last few months at LinkedIn, I've been doing an initiative where I ask students to post video answers to common job prompts, like tell me about a time you used teamwork to solve a problem. We then show these videos to people in the LinkedIn community, which is big. People get feedback, and we then connect students with recruiters from Amazon, Disney, Geico, other Accenture, other high-profile companies. And some of them are already starting to get into the job pipeline. And I've been tracking which of the answers tend to tell a story that resonates with employers. And that's where I want to take you, is the list on the side, which is green thing. Most of these speak to civic work, part-time job work, campus activity. So your transcript and your major and your core resume is enough to get you into the conversation. But what will get you hired is, one student had a great story of a racist incident in school, and he was concerned about it. He organized a student protest that ultimately grew to 400 people. They shut down the school. Local TV came and covered. They did the right thing in terms of dealing with the offender. And there's a San Francisco ad agency that looked at him and goes, we need people who can advocate. He's able to advocate at an extraordinary level. We would want to talk to him. There's another one, just to go down to the other end. Disney was enchanted by someone whose story was Chuck E. Cheese went berserk one day in the way that Chuck E. Cheese always goes berserk. 8-year-olds and sweets and noisy bells. I mean, it's just an invitation to mayhem. And her story was what she did to get it all calmed down, and the ability to connect not just with the kids, but with the parents, and to turn chaos into order. And you got, one of America's showcase employers saying, we'd like you in our management training program. You've got what it takes. So the other examples, reviving the campus club, helping out at the movie set, having good ideas in class. Look for ways to tell stories that come back to collaboration, communication, teamwork, time management, leadership. You've got those experiences. I think one of the things that struck me in the morning session with the career counselors is so often it's 15 minutes into an interview and the students will mention something where people go, oh my God, that is your go-to story. And look for, just go through things that you may think are mundane. They're good enough to impress interviewers. You do not have to have been a White House intern. You do not have to have helped cure cancer in, Sloan Kettering research lab. Something in simple everyday life can give you what you need. But do get good at telling your story. And in fact, if you pick up a copy of the book, the second to last chapter is called How to Tell Your Story. The last one is How to Get Paid Properly. So I try and offer you some very tactical advice. But it's different than saying I got an A in my class, or than I have a 3.7 or whatever. You need to demonstrate that ability to solve the kinds of problems that get solved in business. And have some fun with your story. Bring some personality. Interviewers often will talk to 10 people in the course of a day. If you're the interesting student, that moves you up ahead. I would say I see far more people shortchange themselves by playing it safe than by being a little audacious. So anyway, this is our woman that gets into Accenture, which is very exciting. This is reiterating, I'm not going to let go of this point. These are the 4 key elements that employers want, and you've got that in your own experience. Get a little bit of that into your cover letters. If you're sending out cover letters, get a lot of that into your conversation with people, and then have ready-to-go stories in your interview. You can look up common job interview questions. There are about a dozen of them. And if you've got a story ready to go, having a grit or resilience story is great. Management likes to hire people who have tenacity. There's got to be something in your life that speaks to it. And if you can come into that, all of a sudden, whether you majored in English or something else doesn't concern them. If anything, they take pride in the fact that you're a well-read, thoughtful person who's got the kind of temperament to succeed. Last point, where you look for work matters. For better or worse, America's settled into a stage where we've got some gigantic job hubs in big cities. We have reasonable economies in smaller cities, and then once you get farther out into rural areas, it's a tougher world. So what do we see? This has probably been true just about all the time. Close to 40% of students come from either you grew up in Metro New York and you're heading back, or you know the job markets in Metro New York. A lot of times making that move will get you exposed to a whole caliber of jobs. Even just going down for a couple days in the week and find someone's apartment to crash in for a night or two, and talk people up. They're at full employment. They still have openings. They need you. And go with the confidence that there is someone that wants to hire you and that the job market is right for you. If you look at what other cities people go to, people who've been out of school for 20 years or so spread all over to these big job hubs. Washington, Boston, San Francisco, LA, Atlanta, Philadelphia. People who are more recent graduates tend to stay closer. I don't know if that's increased optimism that there are jobs to be found in Rochester and Utica and Glens Falls. or if it's more of a feeling of, hey, I'm only going to move so far from campus the first year or two. You'll know more than I will. But, key point, some number of people stay here, a lot of people look elsewhere for jobs, and that comes back to the mobility point that I was talking about at the beginning. Again, more examples of people who can do it, no matter what your major is, psychology, English, sociology. I tell a lot of stories in the book, and I do partly because I just was excited and inspired by them, but I also want to offer models for success. So if you're going, yeah, but how do I do it? There's something about just analyzing someone else's experience that can be very helpful on that. The sociology guy is actually running a big chunk of IBM's blockchain initiative. I don't know what it takes to be smart about blockchain. I'm not sure IBM does either. But they know that a project manager with a sociology background can fit all of these, half-aligned experts in security and cryptocurrency and coding and, legal and what have you, and has the ability to be the conductor or the quarterback or the team manager. So you wouldn't think of it as the classic training for a job like that, but the ability to read the room, to see into a lot of different fields, can take you into some really exciting leadership jobs. That is what I've got for you today. I appreciate you coming. We've got time for more questions, so if anyone's got anything on their mind that I've said lately, or if let me know if I gave you enough detail on the tactics, or if there's anything up there that you want an extra round of detail, we can go there too. Thanks again.